Stop telling people about your goals right now. I don't care if it's your mother, your best friend, or your spouse. The moment you announce what you're going to do, you kill it. This isn't motivational garbage or some feel-good advice. This is neuroscience. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between the dopamine hit you get from telling someone about your goal and actually achieving it. Every person who congratulates you on your intention is injecting poison into your ambition. Every "that's amazing" and "you can do it" is draining the fuel you need for execution. The most successful people you admire didn't get there by broadcasting their plans. They got there by shutting up and working while everyone else was talking. There's a pattern that separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who spend their entire lives talking about what they're going to do. This pattern has nothing to do with talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. It has everything to do with one simple discipline that most people violate within minutes of conceiving a new goal, right at this moment. Somewhere in the world, someone is announcing their big plan to lose weight. They're telling their coworkers about the new diet they're starting Monday. They're posting on social media about their fitness transformation. They're explaining in detail how they're going to run a marathon 6 months from now. And the moment those words leave their mouth, the moment they hit that post button, something devastating happens inside their brain. The dream begins to die. You see when you tell people what you're going to do. Your brain experiences something remarkable. It gets a hit of satisfaction, a surge of dopamine, the exact same neurological reward it would receive if you had actually done the work. Your mind cannot distinguish between the recognition you receive for announcing a goal and the recognition you would earn by achieving it. Scientists have studied this extensively. The research is clear and undeniable. When you talk about your intentions, your brain registers social acknowledgement and checks the box. The motivation that should fuel your action gets spent on conversation. This is not about superstition. This is not about karma or energy or any mystical concept. This is pure neuroscience meeting human psychology. Every time you share your plans, you release the psychological tension that would otherwise push you toward action. You feel productive without producing anything. You feel accomplished without accomplishing anything. The people around you nod, smile, offer encouragement, and your subconscious mind interprets this as progress. But nothing has changed. Nothing has been built. Nothing has been created. The most successful people in every field understand something that average performers never grasp. They understand that silence is not just golden, it's strategic, it's protective, it's essential. They know that their ideas, their plans, their visions are fragile in the early stages. These dreams need incubation time, development time, protected time away from the opinions, doubts, and projections of others. Think about what happens when you tell someone about your goal. You're excited, you're energized, you want to share this feeling, so you tell your friend, your spouse, your colleague. And what do? If they're supportive, they celebrate with you. They tell you it's wonderful. They ask questions. They offer suggestions. And all of that feels good. It feels like progress. It's consumption of the emotional fuel you need for the actual work. If they're not supportive, the damage is even worse. They might say they're being realistic. They might claim they're protecting you from disappointment. They'll remind you of that other time you tried something and it didn't work out. They'll point out all the obstacles. They'll list the reasons why it's difficult. They'll mention someone they know who tried the same thing and failed. And now, instead of working on your goal, you're defending it, you're arguing, you're explaining, you're using precious mental energy to convince someone else of something you should be convincing yourself of through action. Here's what most people never realize. The human mind is designed to seek validation. We're social creatures. We want approval. We want recognition. We want people to think well of us. This instinct served our ancestors well when survival depended on group acceptance. But in the modern world, when it comes to personal achievement, this same instinct becomes a trap. You end up seeking validation for your intentions instead of your results. Every highly successful person I've studied, every top performer in business, sports, arts, and personal development, they all share this characteristic. They work in private. They build in silence. They develop their skills, their products, their capabilities away from the public eye. They don't announce, they don't promise. They don't explain what they're working on until it's real, until it's tangible, until it's done. This approach does something powerful to your psychology. When nobody knows what you're doing, when there's no audience watching, when there are no expectations placed upon you by others, you create a private space where failure is not embarrassing. You can experiment, you can make mistakes, you can try different approaches, you can fail repeatedly without anyone keeping score. This freedom is absolutely essential for growth and innovation. Moreover, when you keep your plans private, you maintain complete ownership of your vision. You're not diluted by other people's suggestions. You're not discouraged by their doubts. You're not confused by conflicting advice. Your vision stays pure. Your motivation stays internal. Your commitment stays strong because it's not dependent on anyone else's opinion or support. The principle is simple but profound. Stop announcing, stop explaining, stop seeking premature validation. Start working, start building, start executing. Let your results be your announcement. Let your achievements be your explanation. Let your success be your validation. This shift in approach will transform everything about how you pursue your goals. It will change your relationship with work, with achievement, with yourself. The question is not whether this principle is true. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether you have the discipline to apply it, whether you can resist the temptation to share, whether you can endure the silence, whether you can work without an audience, whether you can build something significant while the world around you has no idea what you're creating. That discipline, that ability to work in silence, that commitment to letting results speak instead of words, that's what separates the achievers from the dreamers. That's what transforms intentions into reality. That's what builds the life you actually want instead of the life you keep talking about wanting. When you share your dreams prematurely, you're essentially asking permission from people who haven't achieved what you're trying to achieve. You're inviting commentary from individuals who are living the exact life you're trying to move beyond. This is not wisdom. This is self-sabotage dressed up as communication. Every goal you announce loses power. Not metaphorical power, actual psychological power. The energy required to transform an idea into reality is finite. You have only so much motivation, so much drive, so much determination. When you spend that energy talking, explaining, and defending your plans, you have less available for execution. It's a simple equation that most people get backwards. They think talking about goals creates momentum. It creates the opposite. It creates the illusion of momentum while draining the very force needed to generate actual movement. Consider what happened to Richard, a 32-year-old accountant who decided he wanted to start his own financial consulting firm. Richard made a critical decision that most aspiring entrepreneurs never make. He told absolutely no one about his plan. Not his wife initially, not his parents, not his closest friends. For 18 months, he worked in complete silence. He studied at night after his regular job. He obtained additional certifications. He built relationships with potential clients through volunteer work. He created systems, processes, and procedures. He saved money. He developed his service offerings. He tested his pricing models during those 18 months. Richard attended family gatherings where relatives asked about his career. He simply said work was fine. When friends invited him to social events, he often declined, citing fatigue. Some people thought he was going through a difficult time. Others assumed he was becoming antisocial. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew he was building something. And that anonymity gave him something priceless. It gave him the freedom to fail privately, to learn without judgment, to build without interference. When Richard finally launched his firm, he already had his first 5 clients lined up. He had systems that worked. He had proven processes. He had confidence built on actual competence, not on the false encouragement of well-meaning friends. Within 2 years, his firm was generating more income than his previous salary. Within 4 years, he had a team of 6 consultants working under him. When people asked how he did it so quickly, he gave them the simple truth. He worked in silence until he had something worth talking about. The mechanism behind Richard's success is rooted in basic human psychology. Your brain treats social recognition as a reward. When you tell someone about your goal and they respond positively, your brain releases dopamine. This neurotransmitter creates feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. Your mind interprets this chemical response as achievement. The problem is that you haven't achieved anything yet. You've only talked about achieving something. But your brain doesn't make that distinction clearly. It registers the emotional payoff and reduces your internal drive to pursue the actual goal. This is why people who constantly talk about their plans rarely execute them. They're getting their psychological needs met through conversation rather than through accomplishment. They're receiving validation for their intentions rather than their results. They become addicted to the feeling of being someone who has big plans rather than actually becoming someone who achieves big results. There's another critical factor at play. When you share your goals with others, you invite their limitations into your vision. Most people project their own fears, doubts, and failures onto your dreams. They don't do this maliciously. They do it unconsciously. They're trying to protect you based on their own experience, their own capabilities, their own worldview. But their experience is not your experience. Their capabilities are not your capabilities. Their limitations should never become your limitations. Your family members often become the biggest obstacles. They love you, they want you to be safe, they don't want to see you disappointed, so they discourage risk. They emphasize security, they remind you of responsibilities, they highlight dangers, they mean well. But their well-meaning advice can kill your ambition before it has a chance to develop. This is why so many successful people had to distance themselves from negative family members during their building phase. Not permanently, but temporarily, just long enough to establish momentum that couldn't be stopped by doubt. The energy vampire effect is real and measurable. Every conversation about your goals with a skeptical person drains your enthusiasm. Every explanation you give to someone who doesn't understand depletes your motivation. Every defense you mount against criticism exhausts your mental resources. These interactions seem small in the moment, but cumulatively they create massive drag on your progress. They slow you down, they wear you down, they eventually break you down if you let them continue. Working in silence creates internal pressure that becomes fuel. When nobody knows what you're doing, when there's no external validation coming, when there's no recognition being offered, you have to generate all your motivation internally. This seems like a disadvantage, but it's actually the greatest advantage possible. It forces you to develop genuine commitment. It requires you to build real discipline. It demands that you create authentic desire that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or encouragement. This internal pressure builds like steam in a closed system. It has nowhere to go except into action. You can't release it through conversation because nobody knows. You can't dissipate it through recognition because there is none. The only outlet is work. The only relief is progress. The only satisfaction comes from actual achievement. This dynamic creates an unstoppable force that pushes you forward even when you don't feel like moving. The protection principle is simple. Your vision needs to be guarded during its formation stage, just as a seed needs protection while it germinates. Your goals need protection while they develop. Expose them too early, and they get trampled. Share them too soon, and they get contaminated by other people's opinions. Announce them prematurely, and they lose the mysterious power that comes from private cultivation. Silence is not secrecy for the sake of being secretive. Silence is strategic protection of something valuable during its most vulnerable phase. The methodology for working in silence requires more than just keeping quiet. It demands a complete restructuring of how you approach goal achievement. Most people have been conditioned their entire lives to share, to communicate, to update others on their progress. Breaking this pattern takes conscious effort and deliberate systems. The first step is understanding what silence actually means in practical terms. Silence doesn't mean you become a hermit. It doesn't mean you refuse to speak to anyone. It means you strategically withhold information about your specific goals, your plans, and your progress until you have concrete results to show. You can still have normal conversations. You can still maintain relationships. You simply avoid discussing what you're building until it's built. Leonard was a software developer working at a mid-sized technology company. He had an idea for a productivity application that he believed could transform how remote teams collaborated. Instead of pitching it to colleagues or seeking feedback from friends, Leonard made a decision. He would build the entire application in complete privacy. Every evening after work, he dedicated 3 hours to development. Every weekend, he spent another 10 hours coding, designing, and testing. When coworkers asked what he did in his free time, Leonard gave vague but truthful answers. He said he was working on personal projects, learning new technologies, staying current in his field. Nobody pressed for details. When his brother asked why he seemed so busy lately, Leonard simply said he was focusing on skill development. These weren't lies. They were strategic non-disclosures. He was protecting his vision from the inevitable doubts and suggestions that would come if he revealed his specific goal after 11 months of silent work. Leonard launched his application. He had a working product with features he'd tested thoroughly. He had documentation. He had a marketing plan he developed alongside the code. Within the first week, he had 200 users. Within 3 months, he had 15,000. Within a year, that application was generating enough revenue that Leonard could leave his job and work on it full time. When former colleagues asked how he developed something so substantial, they were shocked to learn he'd been building it the entire time they'd known him, and nobody had any idea. The art of deflection is essential when you're working in silence. People will ask questions. They'll want to know what you're up to, especially if you're declining social invitations or seem preoccupied. You need responses that satisfy their curiosity without revealing your actual plans. Generic answers work perfectly. When someone asks what you're working on, you can say you're focusing on self-improvement, exploring new skills, or working through some personal projects. These statements are true but non-specific. They give people enough information to feel acknowledged without giving them access to your vision. You must create accountability systems that don't require broadcasting. This is where most people struggle. They believe that telling others about their goals creates accountability. It doesn't. It creates pressure to maintain an image rather than achieve a result. True accountability comes from personal tracking systems. Keep a detailed journal of your daily actions toward your goal. Record what you did, what worked, what didn't, what you learned. Review this journal weekly. The accountability isn't to other people, it's to yourself and to the truth documented in your own handwriting. Set specific milestones that only you know about. Break your large goal into smaller achievements that you can measure privately. Celebrate these victories alone. The satisfaction you feel from hitting a milestone, knowing that nobody else knows you hit it, is pure and powerful. It's not contaminated by anyone's congratulations or diminished by anyone's lack of enthusiasm. It's yours alone. And that ownership creates deeper satisfaction than any external recognition could provide. Your results will speak with a volume that your announcements never could. When you complete something significant and present it to the world as a finished product, the impact is tremendous. People don't see your struggles. They don't see your failures. They don't see the messy middle phase where everything seemed impossible. They see only the result. And that result commands respect in a way that promises and plans never will. A completed novel is infinitely more impressive than the announcement that you're going to write one. A successful business is infinitely more credible than the explanation of the business you're planning to start. The compound effect of silent, consistent action cannot be overstated. When you work privately day after day, week after week, month after month, your progress accumulates in ways that shock people who haven't been watching. They see you at point A, then suddenly you're at point Z, and they have no idea how you got there. This creates a powerful reputation. You become known as someone who delivers rather than someone who talks. You become known as someone who makes things happen rather than someone who explains what they're going to make happen during the building phase. You will experience isolation. This is normal and necessary. You'll attend events where people discuss their plans and you'll stay quiet about yours. You'll have moments where you desperately want to share your progress and you'll have to resist. You'll face setbacks that you'll work through alone because nobody knows you're even trying. This isolation is not a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's filtering out whether you truly want this goal or whether you just want the social status of being seen as someone pursuing this goal. Managing relationships while maintaining operational silence requires wisdom. You don't need to lie to people you care about. You can share that you're working on something meaningful without providing specifics. You can ask for their patience and understanding without explaining every detail. The people who truly support you will respect your need for privacy during your building phase. The people who demand explanations, who push for details, who can't accept your boundaries, are revealing something important about themselves, not about you. The critical difference between secrecy and privacy must be understood. Secrecy implies something shameful, something hidden because it's wrong. Privacy simply means something personal, something protected because it's valuable. You're not keeping secrets, you're maintaining privacy around something important during its development stage. This distinction matters psychologically because it keeps your mindset healthy and your intentions clear. The transformation that occurs when you master this principle extends far beyond any single goal. It fundamentally changes who you become as a person. You develop a different relationship with action itself. Work becomes its own reward rather than a means to gain approval. Progress becomes privately satisfying rather than publicly performed. Achievement becomes internally validated rather than externally dependent. Consider what happened to Maria, a high school teacher who dreamed of becoming a published author for years. She talked about the novel she was going to write. She discussed plots with friends over coffee. She shared character ideas with colleagues during lunch breaks. She posted about her writing aspirations on social media, and every conversation gave her a small hit of satisfaction, a tiny dose of validation that made her feel like a writer without ever actually writing consistently. The book remained perpetually unfinished, always just a few months away from completion. Then something shifted. After attending a writing workshop where the instructor emphasized the power of private work, Maria made a radical decision. She deleted all her social media posts about writing. She stopped discussing her novel entirely. When friends asked about her book, she simply said she was working on it and changed the subject. She created a completely private writing practice that existed only in the early mornings before school and the late evenings after grading papers. For 2 years, Maria wrote in complete silence. Her husband knew she was writing, but she didn't share chapters with him. Her best friend knew she had a project, but Maria never discussed the plot. Her students had no idea their teacher was creating something significant beyond the classroom. During those 2 years, Maria experienced dozens of moments where she desperately wanted to share. She wrote a chapter she was particularly proud of and had to resist the urge to send it to her writing group. She completed her first draft and wanted to announce it online. Each time, she remembered the principle and remained silent. When Maria finally finished her novel, revised it thoroughly, and secured a publishing deal, she made a simple announcement. She posted the book cover with the publication date. The response was explosive. Friends were stunned, colleagues were amazed, former students were inspired. But what struck everyone most wasn't just that she'd written a novel. It was that she'd done it so quietly, so completely, so thoroughly that nobody had seen it coming. The achievement carried a weight that no amount of progress updates could have created. Maria's second novel took 18 months to complete, and again, she worked in absolute privacy. By her third book, people stopped asking about her writing. They just waited to see what she'd announce next. She had become someone known not for talking about writing, but for producing books. The shift in identity was complete. This principle applies universally across every domain of human achievement. The entrepreneur who builds a business in silence launches with customers already lined up and systems already proven. The athlete who trains privately shows up to competition with capabilities that shock observers. The artist who creates without broadcasting produces a body of work that speaks for itself. The student who studies without announcing their efforts presents grades that command respect. The final and perhaps most important truth about working in silence is this: it reveals your true motivation. When nobody knows what you're doing, when there's no audience to impress, when there's no recognition to be gained except from yourself, you discover whether you actually want the goal or whether you just wanted to be seen as someone pursuing the goal. This revelation is uncomfortable but essential. Many people discover that they don't actually want to do the work. They want it to be perceived as the type of person who does that work. Once the perception management is removed, the desire evaporates. But for those who continue working even when nobody's watching, even when there's no applause, even when there's no external validation, something remarkable happens. They develop unshakable confidence. Not the false confidence that comes from others telling you you're great. The real confidence that comes from knowing you can set a goal and achieve it regardless of what anyone else thinks, says, or does. This confidence becomes the foundation for everything else you build in life. The ending of this principle is not an ending at all. It's a beginning. The moment you stop announcing and start executing, you begin a new chapter in your life. You step into a different category of human being. You join the small percentage of people who actually do things rather than talk about doing things. You become part of the elite group that transforms the world through quiet, consistent, powerful action. Your results will eventually speak. They will speak louder than any announcement ever could. They will speak with the authority that only genuine achievement possesses. They will speak in ways that inspire others, not through your words, but through your example. And when people ask how you did it, you'll have the most powerful answer possible. I stopped talking about it and started doing it. The choice is before you now. You can continue living the way most people live, announcing intentions, seeking validation, spending your energy on conversations about what you're going to do. Or you can make a different choice. You can decide right now that your next goal, whatever it is, will be pursued in complete silence, that you'll work on it privately, build it thoroughly, and present it only when it's real. That decision, that commitment to working in silence will change everything. Not eventually, not someday, starting right now, in this moment. With whatever you do next, the question is simple. Will you talk about what you're going to do, or will you become the person who simply does it? Everything you want is waiting on the other side of that choice.